I love to talk. It's an unfortunate characteristic. 1943. Quotable Franklin, selected and edited by Chandler Roosevelt Lindsley. Forward. Most anyone can remember where they were when a president died. On April 12, 1945, my brother and I, ages 8 and 10, were visiting our maternal grandmother in Fort Worth, Texas, and planning to go to the ice capades that evening. Our father, Elliot Roosevelt, was away serving in the U.S. Army Air Corps. Mother called from our ranch to tell us that our grandfather, FDR, had died. We did not attend the ice capades. From March 1933 to April 1945, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt dealt with the emergence of the United States from the Great Depression, followed by the desperate years of fighting Germany, Italy, and Japan in World War II, and, finally, planning for the establishment of the United Nations and a world at peace. Throughout these years of crisis, Roosevelt had completed faith in the American people to emerge triumphant from all vicissitudes. He was the first president to use the radio to frequently inform and reassure a troubled nation on situations of vital concern. In this little book are quotations from FDR's addresses to the American people during the 12 years of his presidency. May you find many that are relevant today as they were so many years ago. Chandler Roosevelt Lindsley. 1940. We Americans of today, all of us, we are characters in this living book of democracy, but we are also its author. It falls upon us now to say whether the chapters that are to come will tell a story of retreat or a story of continued advance. I believe that the American people will say, forward. 1943. The more you travel, the more you realize that the whole world is one neighborhood. 1933. A selfish victory is always destined to be an ultimate defeat. 1933. I am in the unfortunate position of having to pass on the question of the death penalty. It is the most disagreeable function that a governor or the president has to perform. 1940. Tyranny hates and fears nothing more than the free exchange of ideas, the free play of the mind that comes from education. 1945. We pray that we may be worthy of the unlimited opportunities that God has given us. 1934. There is nothing so American as our national parks. 1936. For all our millions of square miles, for all our millions of people, there is a unity in language and speech, in law and in economics, in education and in general purpose, which nowhere finds its match. 1935. Men and nature must work hand in hand. The throwing out of balance of the resources of nature throws out of balance also the lives of men. 1935. A sympathetic understanding of fellow men has ever been the hallmark of a leader. 1941. The hopes of the Republic cannot forever tolerate either undeserved poverty or self-serving wealth. 1935. Democracy is not a static thing. It is an everlasting march. 1940. But we have learned that freedom in and of itself is not enough. Freedom of speech is of no use to a man who has nothing to say. Freedom of worship is of no use to a man who has lost his God. Democracy, to be dynamic, must provide for its citizens opportunity as well as freedom. 1935. It is true that other nations may, as they do, enforce contrary rules of conscience and conduct. It is true that policies may be pursued under flags other than our own, but those policies are beyond our jurisdiction. 1940. Mothers and fathers, by the kind of life they built within the four walls of the home, are largely responsible for the future social and public life of the country. 1935. The youth of today are our sole investment in tomorrow. 1940. We are a nation of many nationalities, many races, many religions, bound together by a single unity, the unity of freedom and equality. Whoever seeks to set one nationality against another seeks to degrade all nationalities. Whoever seeks to set one race against another seeks to enslave all races. Whoever seeks to set one religion against another seeks to destroy all religion. You cannot borrow your way out of a debt, but you can invest your way into a sounder future. From 1935. 1936. I have seen war. I have seen war on land and sea. I have seen blood running from the wounded. I have seen the dead in the mud. I have seen cities destroyed. I have seen children starving. I have seen the agony of mothers and wives. I hate war. 1935. The Bible has withstood assaults. It has resisted and survived the most searching microscopic examination. It has stood every test that could be applied to it, and yet it continues to hold its supreme place as the book of books. I commend its thoughtful and reverent reading to all our people. It refines and elevating influence is indispensable to our most cherished hopes and ideals. From 1935. 1937. The ultimate failures of dictatorships cost humanity far more than any temporary failures of democracy. 1936. Inequality may linger in the world of material things, but great music, great literature, great art, and the wonders of science are, and should always be, open to all. 1940. When you and I step into the voting booth, we can proudly say, I am an American, and this vote I am casting is the exercise of my highest privilege, my most solemn duty to my country. 1936. Human personality is something secret. It enjoys the light of reason and liberty. It grows by rising above material things and wedding itself to spiritual ideals. 1937. Government is competent when all who compose its work when government is competent when all who compose it work as trustees for the whole people. 1936. We are poor indeed if this nation cannot afford to lift from every recess of American life the dread fear of the unemployed that they are not needed in the world. We are poor indeed if this nation cannot afford to lift from every recess of American life the dread fear that of the unemployed that they are not needed in the world. We are poor indeed if this nation cannot afford to lift it. Okay. 1937. In a world of mutual suspicions, peace must be affirmatively reached for. It cannot just be wished for. It cannot just be waited for. 1935. It is an error to say that we have conquered nature. We must rather start to shape our lives in more harmonious relationship with nature. 1936. Government itself is, of necessity, more complex because all of life is more complex. 1936. There is nothing in nature I am as fond of as a tree. 1935. Excessive armaments are in themselves conducive to those fears and suspicions which breed war. 1940. Freedom means the supremacy of human rights everywhere. 1936. A prosperous world has no permanent room in it for dictatorship or war. 1936. The school is the last expenditure upon which America should be willing to economize. 1941. In our country, disagreements among us are expressed in the polling places. In the dictatorships, disagreements are suppressed in the concentration camp. 1944. Religious intolerance, social intolerance, and political intolerance have no place in our American life. 1936. Inside the polling booth, every American man and woman stands as the equal of each other American man and woman. They have no superiors. They have no masters save their own mind and conscience. There they are sovereign American citizens. 1944. We either work with the other great nations or we might someday have to fight them. 1936. The realization that we are all bound together by hope of a common future rather than by reverence for a common past has helped us to build upon this continent a unity unapproached in any similar area or population in the whole world. 1935. Continued dependence upon relief induces a spiritual and moral disintegration fundamentally destructive to the national fiber. To dole out relief in this way is to administer a narcotic, a subtle destroyer of the human spirit. 1936. Liberty and peace are living things. In each generation, if they are to be maintained, they must be guarded and vitalized anew. 1936. The motto of war is, let the strong survive, let the weak die. The motto of peace is, let the strong help the weak to survive. 1944. We must continue this administration's policy of conserving the enormous gifts with which an abundant providence has blessed our country, our soil, our forests, and our water. 1937. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much, it is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. 1936. Liberty requires opportunity to make a living decent according to its standards of time, a living which gives man not only enough to live by, but something to live for. 1937. In our personal ambitions, we are individualists, but in our seeking for economic and political progress as a nation, we all go up, or else we all go down, as one people. 1936. Peace is jeopardized by the few and not by the many. Peace is threatened by those who seek selfish power. 1941. All of recorded history bears witness that the human race has made true advancement only as it has appreciated spiritual values. 1937. Armaments and deficits pile up together. 1937. The Constitution of the United States was a layman's document, not a lawyer's contract. 1936. Better the occasional faults of the government that lives in a spirit of charity than the constant omission of a government frozen in the ice of its own indifference. Again, 1936. Better the occasional faults of a government that lives in a spirit of charity than the constant omission of a government frozen ice of its own indifference. 1941. But when you see a rattlesnake poised to strike, you do not wait until he has struck before you crush him. 1938. Those suffering hardship from no fault of their own have a right to call upon the government for aid, and a government worthy of its name must make fitting response. 1938. We need more and more a consciousness of the fact that in the highest and noblest sense we are but our brother's keeper. 1940. The value of love will always be stronger than the value of hate, since any nation or group of nations which employs hatred eventually is torn to pieces by hatred within itself. 1941. There is no such thing as impregnable defense against powerful aggressors who sneak up in the dark and strike without warning. 1938. The importance of those unemployable millions may be more fully understood perhaps when it's realized that approximately 1/3 of them are under 25 years of age and will be either assets or liabilities for many years to come, depending upon public policies towards them. If we do not give them the chance at something like normal living, it is inevitable that they will become millions of individual problems. For those able-bodied unemployed, I am definitely committed to the giving of jobs instead of relief. 1935. Which this country seeks no conquest. We have no imperial designs. Well. 1938. History proves that dictatorships do not grow out of strong and successful governments, but out of weak and helpless ones. 1938. Remember always that all of us are descended from immigrants and revolutionists. 1948. Freedom from want and freedom go hand in hand. Freedom from want and freedom from fear go hand in hand. 1938. We cannot afford to overlook any source of human raw material. Genius flowers in the most unexpected of places. 1944. Great power must be used for great purposes. 1939. The family still remains the basis of society as we know it, and it must be preserved as an institution if our democracy is to be perpetuated. If we lose the home, we are in grave risk of undermining all those other elements of stability and strength which contribute to the well-being of our national life. (1938) Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. The real safeguard of democracy, therefore, is education. 1944. People who are hungry and out of a job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. I like that quote. People who are hungry and out of a job are the stuff of which dictatorships are made. I doubt if there is any problem in the world today, social, political, or economic, that would not find happy solutions if approached in the spirit of the Sermon on the Mount. 1939. Nations cannot stand still because by the very act of standing still, the rest of the procession moving forward inevitably leaves them in the rear. 1938. Remember that the fathers of the American Revolution repressed many religions and came from many foreign lands. Represented many religions and came from many foreign lands. Well, maybe. 1940. America, a good or bad country, will America, a good or bad country, will depend on what we make, individually, of ourselves. A selfish and greedy people cannot be free. Very true. 1939. A law for compulsory school attendance is one thing, and a chance to go to school is another. 1939. Only where men are free can the arts flourish and the civilization of national culture reach full flower. 1938. I'm calling your attention to the past and present generosity of the people of America. That generosity never has failed, and please God, it never will fail. 1938. The Social Security Act does not offer anyone, either individually or collectively, an easy life, nor was it ever intended to do so. The Social Security Act does not offer anyone, either individually or collectively, an easy life, nor was it ever intended to do so. 1939. Extreme rightists and extreme leftists ought not to be taken out by us and shot against the wall, for they sharpen the argument and make us realize the value of the democratic middle course. 1939. Unless there is belief in some guiding principle and some trust in a divine plan, nations are without light and people perish. 1939. All the lectures on nutrition will avail nothing unless there is food for a child to eat. 1939. All the lectures on nutrition will avail nothing unless there is food for a child to eat. 1935. When our economic system fails to sustain an adequate standard of life, it is the woman who face the most poignant privation. Do you know how to say this? Do you know how to say this?
What am I looking at?
This word, sorry, my thumb.
Oh, okay. Poignant?
Okay, I don't know either. Anyway, Poignant. Privation. 1940. Keep your ideals high, keep both feet on the ground, and keep everlasting at it. 1938. Those who work to help the suffering find true spiritual fellowship in that labor of love. 1940. The value of truth and sincerity is always stronger than the value of lies and cynicism. The value of truth and sincerity is always stronger than the value of lies and cynicism. 1940. We used up or destroyed much of our natural heritage just because that heritage was so bountiful. 1934. Civilization cannot go back. Civilization must not stand still. 25 more pages. 1935. The more trade, the more employment. 1938. I hope every citizen with a competence, great or little, extends the helping hand to his less favored brother. 1936. The history of every nation is eventually written in the way in which it cares for its soil. 1941. We, and all others who believe as deeply as we do, would rather die on our feet than live on our knees. 1935. If we insist on choosing different roads, most of us will not reach our common destination. 1941. There never has been, there isn't now, and never will be any race of people on earth fit to serve as masters over their fellow men. 1936. Remember that when men and women are idle, they are not in the market for the products of industry. Remember that when men and women are idle, they are not in the market for the products of industry. So when people stop consuming, they stop being consumers. When people stop to think for themselves, they stop consuming. Peace may not be won with asking, but it can be won with striving. From 1937. In 1941, no physical strength can never permanently withstand the impact of spiritual force. From 1941, we will accept only a world consecrated to freedom of speech and expression, freedom of every person to worship in his own way, freedom from want, and freedom from terror. 1936. Peace is necessary to ultimate happiness. 1941. I have implicit faith in the youth of this country. 1938. If a man farms his land to the waste of the soil or the trees, he destroys not only his own assets, but the nation's assets as well. 1938. I must make a confession. I did not realize until the last few years how much influence America has in the world. I did not really, deep down in my heart, believe very much in church missions, in the other lands. Today I do. 1941. We will not, under any threat, or in the face of any danger, surrender the guarantees of liberty our forefathers framed for us in our Bill of Rights. 1943. We have also learned that if we do not pull the fangs of the predatory animals of this world, they will multiply and grow in strength, and they will be at our throats again once more in a short generation. 1933. Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. 1943. Society must meet in full its obligation to make available to all the members at least the minimum adequate nutrition. 1938. The teachers of America are the ultimate guardians of the human capital of America. 1945. Nations, like individuals, make mistakes. We must be big enough to acknowledge our mistakes of the past and to correct them. 1945. Nations, like individuals, make mistakes. We must be big enough to acknowledge our mistakes of the past and to correct them. 1936. There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations much is given, of other generations much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. 1938. What is law without enforcement? 1938. No system of government gives so much to the individual or exacts so much as a democracy. 1944. Nobody will ever deprive the American people of the right to vote except the American people themselves. And the only way they could do that is by not voting at all. Or voting the wrong thing. 1936. Perhaps Providence did prepare this American continent to be a place of the second chance. Oh, no recording stop. Oh, no, just notification. Battery low. I'm at 16%. 1944. The American people have a good habit. The habit of going right ahead and accomplishing the impossible. 1944. Now I have the possibility of old-fashioned theory that when you have problems to solve, when you have objections to achieve, you cannot get very far by just talking about them. 1936. Truly, if the genius of mankind that has invented the weapons of death cannot discover the means of preserving peace, civilization as we know it lives in an evil day. 1936. Taxes, after all, are the dues that we pay for the privilege of membership in an organized society. 1944. Nations, like individuals, do not always see alike or think alike, and international cooperation and progress are not helped by any nation assuming that it has a monopoly of wisdom or of virtue. 1934. The parents of our children are the guardians of our future citizens. They cannot evade the responsibility which is theirs through example and intelligent understanding to inspire and lay the groundwork for that type of character which does what is right under any given circumstance and is able to withstand temptation. 1945. We may make mistakes, but they must never be mistakes which result from faintness of heart or abandonment of moral principles. 1937. Floods, droughts, and dust storms are in a very real sense manifestations of nature's refusal to tolerate continued abuse of her boundaries. 1938. Ideas are not limited by territorial borders. They are the common inheritance of all free people. 1945. The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. Let us move forward with strong and active faith. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt International Park Commission, Welshpool, New Brunswick, Canada. 459 Route 774, Welshpool, NB, Canada, E5E 1A4, P.O. Box 129, Lübeck, Maine, USA 04652, www.fdr.net. That was Quotable Franklin, read by Nathaniel.